And so I'm not saying you did something wrong. I'm just saying that this situation that occurred that I happened to be around, this is what happened for me. I'm sharing my experience. The other really cool thing about this that we don't talk about very much, nobody can deny your experience.
Mm-hmm.
No one can say you're wrong. That's my, it's like feelings.
It's your feelings. Yeah.
Chris, you're not happy. You're sad. No, that's a fake lie. You're sad.
Yeah.
Nobody, you'd be like, dude, nobody can deny your feelings or argue them or your experiences of life. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the TPM Show. We have a very special guest for you today. We have Coach Chris that's with us. Coach Chris runs our Navigate program, our program for non-business owners who are looking to save their marriage without talking about it. It's one of our flagship programs that we have rolled out. It's been very, very successful. And so Chris is in the trenches with men every single day. When I say every day, I do mean every single day. And we have some really great topics to go over with you guys today. Chris, thanks for being here again, man.
Yeah, I love coming to see you guys, and it's always great to be at the ranch.
Yeah, it is. It is. You always bring a smile to my face when I walk through, even after a tough conversation.
That's good.
Well, you were saying before we hit record that during some of the calls with the guys, you noticed a couple patterns coming up.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of these guys have been in relationships a really, really long time. And because of that, there's a lot of friction. There's a lot of things that they're dealing with to try to organize and kind of get back on track. And one of the things I'm noticing that it's really hard for these guys to kind of put up new boundaries for themselves and to really show up for themselves. And it's, you can actually hear the fear in their voices of when they're trying to think about what that would look like to sit their wives down and talk about what's not working for them.
Yeah, so boundaries are a really tough thing, right? First of all, with a lot of guys, they make boundaries malleable, right? And that's the toughest thing. So it reminds me of raising kids. You and I both have young kids. So if I go to, my son's name's Bodie, and he'll be 8 in April. So if I go to Bodie and I say, hey man, you can't play in the street. And then I see him going into the street. I'm like, okay, well, this time it's okay. But next time you can't do it, or something along those lines. He's confused. His little mind and his brain is just confused. Like, am I allowed to? Am I not? Or he makes up the story that if I just push dad's boundaries, then dad will just let me do what I want. And I see a lot of guys do this with their wives. I don't know if you see this as well, but a lot of guys tend to say, hey, you can't talk to me this way. And then their wife proceeds to do so. And they shut up, or they go inward like a clamshell, to protect themselves. But I see it with guys with their wives are having emotional affairs, physical affairs, spending money. It's another big one. Or just not listening to them or having their needs met.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest part is a lot of times are suppressing their needs. I think as young men, we're culturally designed we were taught to show up for everybody else, our wives, our children, our work. And so we're always on the back burner.
Yeah.
And so our needs generally aren't put out there. And then if you haven't had those boundaries long enough, you've just made this system that your needs aren't important and your emotional, you're just not going to ever get those fulfilled. And to come back after years and years of that same process and try to put that in, there's going to be friction, right? There's going to be pushback.
100%. So let's talk about what a boundary is first, and then we can talk about how men can set boundaries and have those conversations, and why they might have fear of having those conversations. So to me, Chris, a boundary would be something that is immovable, unless there's a odd circumstance, right? That 1 in a million type thing that happens. I'll use my son going to the street again as an example. He can't go into the street in this example, but maybe a sister falls in the street and a car's coming and he goes in the street to grab her, right?
Yeah.
Those kinds of things could be exceptions to the rule. But a boundary is something that's a firm thing that you hold on to. And it's not something that's malleable, I guess is the definition I would use. Does that match with yours?
Yeah, absolutely. Like the idea that you're not going to have an affair. You're not going to have another sexual partner. Very strong boundary. But it can be also as simple as, and mine was, we're never going to tell each other to shut up.
Yeah.
It's disrespectful. That's a boundary we're never going to cross. Right.
Yep.
So it can be very big, but also can be a smaller one.
Yeah, my wife and I have something similar. We don't talk negatively about each other in front of other people. We always choose the bright. We have a lot of kind of boundaries. Now, I don't want to confuse boundaries with agreements, because I think that we don't talk negatively in front of other people is more of an agreement than just maybe a boundary. But a boundary for me would be if my wife had an affair. That's a boundary. You cross that line, sorry, game over. There's severe consequences coming through. But having said that, if my wife talked disrespectfully about me in front of other people, there would be severe consequences with that as well.
Yeah, I think with like agreements are something that can change because, right, there's variables that can happen with that. And so to have a very clear idea of what is an agreement and what's a boundary is conversations that aren't happening in relationships. And so how are we supposed to know that? If we're not communicating those properly, those are going to get confused and intertwined. Yeah.
And it's something my wife and I will talk about. If something wants to change, we'll say, hey, we agreed to do this. Now agreements change. And so if we want to have a new agreement, we can have a discussion about it. But that doesn't mean just because you want to do it, that's the new agreement.
Yeah.
Agreement and boundaries are similar, but agreements, two parties agree. I say, Chris, this is what I want. Do you agree? Yes, no. If you say yes, cool, we have an agreement. We shake hands, right? Just like a business transaction. If you say no, now we have further dialogue. But a boundary is completely different, right? And I think the reason men have such a hard time with this is, one, they'd never set boundaries before, right? So it's a new thing. Two is a lot of us guys put our value, our self-worth in the reflection we get back from our woman, right? What my woman thinks about me is who I am. So if I try to set a boundary, right, what is she going to think about that boundary, especially if the boundary is communicating needs?
Yeah, it's that external validation though. It's the Mr. Nice Guy syndrome, really. We fall into that, right? We make it easy. Like we're not engaging in those agreements. We just agree and like let whatever that goes, right? And that's always does work out for us in the long run.
It doesn't. And so let me use an easy boundary that we could set in place to help the guys, because there's cheating, obviously, but one that seems to come up that's swept under the rug a lot is money, spending of money. So maybe there's a boundary that you've created, like, look, I will not go into the situation that we went into. I'm making up the scenario on the fly. We'll not go into the situation we were before, where we were living paycheck to paycheck, because it just stressed me out all the time. So I will not do this. You cannot spend $10,000 on our credit cards or max them out. She agrees. This is a firm boundary because this is causing trepidation within the man. It's really driving him nuts. Let's just say that's the thing. Then the wife goes out and spends the money. She goes to the salon. She buys new dresses, new shoes. You guys get the idea. Now, if he doesn't do something, so I had a client recently that took credit cards away from his wife, just cut her off. Like, okay, you passed the boundary. You're not being responsible to this, and just cut her off. Give her an allowance. Whereas most men would say, babe, we talked about this. You said you weren't going to spend money. Yes, the dress looks nice on you. Okay, let's go out to dinner, right?
Yeah.
Something like that scenario. Yeah. Now she is not going to respect him. She's not going to trust his word, right? Because he didn't uphold his boundary. Why should she? That man has gone down a few levels in her sexual market value, right? The way that she perceives him, because she knows she can break him down.
Yeah, and the guys don't recognize that they lose every time they don't hold that boundary. They lose a little bit more respect, right?
Yeah. Respect from her, but also respect for themselves, because they feel a little weaker and, I gave in again, and she knows, kind of like, and I'm not just saying women are like children, but I'm using this to be an analogy for guys. She knows, just like when my son, if he begs for an extra cookie, if I give in to him, what the heck is he going to do next time he wants a cookie, an extra cookie? He's going to beg dad and wear dad down until he gets it.
Yeah, I think a lot of times the guys will come to me and they'll be complaining about how they're being treated. Yeah. And I have to step them back and be like, you've allowed this to happen.
100%.
You've allowed this treatment to happen to you. And now you want to do something about it. And now it's really hard. And that's the other part is, a lot of them are afraid of that confrontation, to step into that space, because they've avoided it for so long, right?
Yeah, they have. And it goes with that old idea that we train people how to treat us, right? And so if you're being treated poorly, you've trained that person to treat you poorly. There's certain people, guys listening to this will know, there's certain people you just don't disrespect, right? Friends, colleagues, other business owners, whatever. You meet the person, right away, my old jokes aren't going to go well here, And it's the energy and the aura they give off, if you will. Whereas other people who are malleable or don't think as well about themselves, they can be trampled on, and guys start to become doormats for their wives. And there's nothing unsexier than a doormat of a man.
Yeah, what's interesting is the program, as I'm seeing these guys progress and they're doing the work, they're showing up for themselves, they're filling their cup.
Yep.
All of a sudden, this self-love starts building in them, and all these ahas are coming on, and that's where this comes in. Is we're like, I don't want to be treated like this anymore. How am I going to handle this? Because I do value me now.
Yep.
And
yeah, 100%. I'm agreeing with you. So what's the solution, right? So to me, the solution is first loving yourself. The second step is getting real with what your real boundaries are. Are you willing to die on the hill for this one, right? Are you willing for your wife to be pissed off if you call her on violating a boundary? Are you willing to allow her to not talk to you for a week, a month, whatever time period is, because that boundary is so strong?
Yeah.
Or is it a want, not a boundary? Because they're different.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I think we don't spend enough time as men to understand our boundaries.
Yeah.
We need time. Like there's a situation, I moved out of the house. I took that time and I wrote down, what are my boundaries? And sometimes they were. Sometimes I had to cross them back out and go back and then understand what ones were boundaries, which ones were agreements, and which ones would I go to war for. Right?
Yeah. And why do you have them? Why are they boundaries for you? Why is it super important? And then once you have those written out, like, here are my boundaries. And for most people, they're going to be a few, right? It's not going to be a list of 60 things, most of them, it's going to be a few things that you're like, I'm willing to go to war, die on the hill for this thing because it's that important to me. When you have those, then the important thing for a guy to do is get into his grounded masculinity. And what do I mean by that? I mean that grounded, confident, loving state. Kind of like you, again, I'm going to use the child as a reference, but kind of like my little daughter. If I'm going to talk to her and it's very important, I'm not going to yell at her, come into the meeting mad and angry. I'm going to come in there, be calm energy, dad energy, if you will, but firm, but very firm and loving. And I think it's really important for men to do that, and use breath work if you need to, meditation, exercise beforehand, whatever you need to do to make sure this happens. And certainly be doing your alpha rise and shine, right? And that's critical. Yeah,
you got to make sure your cup's full. You got to feel confident walking in that, but you also have to come from a loving place and some empathy, right? To understand, to be able to connect, because if you're coming with force, the walls are going up and nothing's getting through. And so coming to that with love and sincerity, is so important.
It is. You're going to be met with the same energy you come in with, right? So if you come in with force, you're going to be met with force.
We're always mirroring, right?
We are always mirroring, man. And so in that, this is where you get to sit down with your partner and say, I would start it off with something like, babe, I love you, and there's some things I need to share with you. I need to talk to you about. And set the tone, right? And maybe assure, don't worry, this is not, I'm not leaving. I haven't done anything that you need to know about, but there's some things coming up for me that I really like to talk to you. Do you have an hour?
Yeah.
So you want to make sure it's the right time, right? I've also seen a lot of guys try to do this when their wife's rushing around, kids between soccer or basketball practice, or she's got her own work and her own responsibilities. I mean, shoot, she's got her whole day planned in her head, just like we do. She wasn't anticipating this conversation. So set the tone. And if she says she doesn't, no problem. When can we sit down and talk? Right? Close that loop.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and it's crazy, the guys that I had a conversation this morning, and I had to bring to his attention that there's a conversation that needs to happen. And he just wasn't quite ready. But
hey guys, I just want to share something with you. I'm sure we can both agree that in order to fix something, you need to know what's broken. And not only do you know what's broken, but a step-by-step methodology on how you can fix it. That's the easiest way to do it, right? Otherwise, you're going to be toiling with things. That's why I created a free training, a training that not only shows you how you got to where you are, where your relationship is missing that love, respect, admiration, and even intimacy that it used to have, to how you get it back. How do you retain that where your wife's looking at you the same way she used to look at you when she said, I do? You know, I don't know about you, but for me, when my wife looks at me like I'm her man, that I feel like I can conquer the world. And I want that for you. Simply go over to thepowerfulman.com/scales. That's thepowerfulman.com/scales. And I have a free video training for you. You can just click play and see if this resonates for you. Now back to the podcast.
That's the steps. He's going to write down his boundaries, understand that, build that confidence, and come ready at the appropriate time to deliver that message to her.
Yeah, good for you, man. I remember at an Alpha Reset, I've told the story before, a guy came in and was complaining about a conversation he had to have with a business partner. And this is right when the men arrive. We call it day 0, as you know. And I go outside and have the conversation. Don't come back till you're done. He's like, what? He came back and it was like, that was the best conversation I've ever had. And so and I share that just to emphasize, your wife may be waiting for this conversation. Like, she's definitely waiting for you to show up and show up in this way as a leader of your family, but she also may be desiring the conversation. I hear that a lot.
Yeah, I had a situation recently that the same thing in this conversation needed to happen. And he was incredibly nervous, prepared himself very well, came up and pretty much said, I'm not going to be emotionally manipulated. I'm not going to be gaslit. We're going to have a real conversation. That was a boundary he laid the conversation out with.
Yeah.
It went from her about ready to serve divorce appraiser to her breaking down, crying, releasing, right? And him showing up and be able to comfort and be in that space. And it ended up being this really beautiful moment for the two of them. And they're still working. They got a lot of things to do, but wow, it was really, really powerful. And I don't think we recognize that as guys, that our wives want us to have those boundaries. They need us to have those boundaries, right?
Yeah, they do. And that's masculine energy polarizing with feminine energy, right? Her breaking down and surrendering into it shows me that she trusted him in that moment, at least. Like, I hear this all the time. And as you know, my wife coaches women, and she'll tell me all the time, like, most of the time the wives are just like, when the F is he going to show up? Right? When is he going to show up as the leader of our house? And when he does, great things happen. So this is a way a guy could show up as a leader of the house, is setting these boundaries. Now, again, just to recap, guys are listening to this, you have to first list your boundaries. Like, I'm dying on a hill. Know why they're important to you, and don't do this from blame. It's important to you, not why it's important that she doesn't do something or does do something. What is it for you? And so take your wife out of it. She just happens to be the person there. The third thing is come with that grounded masculinity, if you will, that energetic state, love, as you said, from that place. And I think the fourth thing, Chris, is really, in my experience, is relating to her how important this really is, not with threats. So it could look something like, hey, babe, I just want to let you know, I feel that when I feel that that you're being very critical of me, that what that draws up with inside me is I feel like we're no longer on a team, that you aren't my partner here. And what I want is for us to always be on the same team and for us to lift each other up, not put each other down. I don't even know if you know that you're doing it, but the way it's being received for me is that you're criticizing me in front of other people. And that hurts, quite honestly. And I wonder what happened between us and why we can't be on the same team. And working with Chris and the Navigate guys, I've realized that the value that I could bring to our family, and I'm just going to let you know that I love myself, I love you, and I love our marriage enough that I'm going to be holding a firm boundary against any criticism. Does that make sense to you?
I love that. And that example is going to resonate with so many guys, because a lot of they don't understand how to deliver it.
Yes.
Right. And so that example is going to go a long ways for a lot of guys.
So, I mean, and so for a lot of guys that are in the movement, clean slate method, guys, you got to master the clean slate method. Guys that are not in the movement, meaning you're not actively in a TPM program or haven't been in one, We have done countless podcasts on the hidden motives technique. I mean, it's crazy. So we're on a mission to help men, right? We're on a mission to save children by helping their fathers first. And when I say that to people, they look at me kind of funny. I'm like, why do you think we've done 950 or 900? I don't know what podcast number this is anymore, Chris. Yeah. We've done a lot. We give it all away. Yeah. If you want a proven methodology, you do the activation method, right? It's a methodology that walks you through all of this. So that's where I look at something like mastering the hidden motives so you can deliver this properly. The hidden motives allows somebody to deliver this without putting blame, you know? So there's no blame inside of it. And what I'll also add on, this is a lesson for me that I had to learn. Because I mean, man, I was just like everybody else. Like, you know, if you do this, when you don't criticize me again, and, you know, if you change, everything's going to be great.
The threats.
Yeah, oh man, I'm leaving. You know, taking my ball and going home. But when I started learning that, okay, what if I took the other person out and just said, hey, when this happens, this is what occurs for me. So, trying to think of an example I can give. I might go to my wife. Maybe my wife is joking with her friends, just being sarcastic, joking, but I end up being the butt of the joke or something like that. What I want to say I could say something like this, just to give another example, like, hey, you know that thing you said to Stephanie in front of the girls, you know, that came across as a little punchy for me. And what that does is that reminded me of the way my dad used to put me down and kind of really put me back into that place. And I'd really like to have a conversation that we don't put each other down in front of other people. Does that work for you? And in my experience, most of the time when I've had these conversations, it's not a real one, but when I've had conversations like that with my wife, she's like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I was doing that. Or, oh, I'm totally on board.
Yeah, because it's not a threat. You're actually being vulnerable and open about those emotions. You're sharing a piece of you at that point, and it's not a threat, right?
Well, I'm also telling her, I'm not saying you did this, you caused me to feel this way. I'm saying when this happened, what occurred for me on my side of the street was this feeling of anxiety or being less than, which reminds me of when my dad used to put me down, you know. And so I'm not saying you did something wrong. I'm just saying that this situation that occurred that I happened to be around, this is what happened for me. I'm sharing my experience. The other really cool thing about this that we don't talk about very much, nobody can deny your experience. No one can say, you're wrong. That's it's like feelings.
It's your feelings, yeah.
Chris, you're not happy. You're sad. No, that's a fake lie. You're sad.
Yeah.
Nobody, you'd be like, dude, nobody can deny your feelings or argue them or your experiences of life. They just can't. They can argue the facts. And when you accuse somebody of something or blame them, then really what you're doing is making them defensive. You're giving them an opportunity to defend themselves. And that analogy was setting boundaries in that manner. That person may not choose the boundary, but they have to respect that's what's going on for you.
Yeah, makes so much sense. Yeah,
it's awesome, man. Boundaries are such a big thing for everybody to learn. And we all have boundaries, but very few of us communicate them to the other people, right? We have expectations.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes we know them and sometimes we don't. And sometimes we got to spend some time there.
Yeah.
Right?
I love what you did, is taking some time away and actually thinking, okay, what are my boundaries versus my needs versus, I think you said, my go to war with or go to war for. And wants and desires, right? Those are also important things to communicate. But boundaries, again, guys, you have to hold them firm, right? Again, you know, if your kids, if you tell them they can't jump on the couch and they jump on the couch and you're just tired, and so you just let them do it because you're so tired, that's no longer a boundary. And they're not going to trust your other boundaries either.
Do you think too, like in order to even get to your wants and needs and desires, those boundaries have to be laid down? Because it's hard to really kind of start communicating those without having those boundaries in place.
I think you can do it without having them in place. Yeah. I think that's where you're going to have the most disruption though, and leaks, is the boundaries. Because if you think of like a hierarchy of needs almost, boundaries are at the top. Like, these are my rules for life. I've seen guys come back with like hundreds of boundaries. You're like, these aren't boundaries, dude. My boundaries, I'm getting a blowjob every day. Like, it's not a boundary. That's a desire or a want, right? Yeah. I get it, but that's not the category we want to put this in.
Yeah.
And so you really want to look at this, like, what is it? And I'm sure you do this. What I think is fun is, where did this boundary come from? Is this a societal boundary? Is this a boundary you truly want, or you just decide, well, we're not supposed to, you're not supposed to talk to other men. This one actually comes up a lot, where guys will get so angry that their wife is talking to another man. Well, we were at a dinner party and she was talking to this guy, most of the night. I was just so pissed. She was violating my boundaries. Like, have you ever told her that talking to another man is a problem? Well, no, you don't do that. I'm like, I'm cool with my wife talking to other guys. I don't care.
I think we see that sometimes as a weakness. Like, we're not confident. We lose our confidence, right? And like, we don't want her to see that piece of us. Like,
well, yeah, but also this guy didn't communicate to his wife that this is a problem. It's a boundary for me. So she doesn't, poor woman doesn't know. Totally. And then next thing you know, her husband's just pissed at her all night for talking to a person of the opposite sex.
Yeah.
Now, if that's a boundary, a true boundary, versus an agreement, for this guy, it was a boundary. And it was like he was going for divorce because of this. But his wife had no clue, according to him. I actually did talk to this woman at one point. But his wife had no clue at all what was going on. So all she knew is she had a jealous husband that was seemingly mad at her, but she didn't know why. So now she's dysregulated. Doesn't feel safe, doesn't feel seen or heard, all of these things. And you can imagine how that went in the bedroom.
Yeah, just lack of communication.
100%.
Yeah.
So get clear on the boundaries, know where they're coming from. I think that's a super important thing. Like, why is that a boundary for you? Is it because of the way it makes you feel? Is that a theological thing? Like, hey, Christians don't do this, or Jews don't do that, or whatever it is. Or is it something, this is a boundary because my parents said we don't do this? But get to the root of it, and then you can start seeing if your boundaries for yourself are malleable. And they might be, and you might want to start questioning those things too.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. It's like pulling back the layers of your own boundaries.
Exactly, man. Yeah. You start to have less and less boundaries. And I will also tell you the less boundaries, the less boundaries you have, the more fun life becomes.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about true boundaries. I'm not saying anybody let yourself be a doormat or anything else, but don't create so many boundaries and rules because you're trying to get control. Because that's what it is. When I see that, it's men grasping for control, or women grasping for control by having 100 boundaries or what have you, so they can control the environment around them. You lose it. You kind of become the bubble boy, if you will.
That makes sense.
Build your own cell. Yeah. Awesome conversation, man. Awesome topic. Thanks for all you're doing for Navigate. It's awesome to see that program being a success, helping men around the world. So I just absolutely love it and appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks. I'm having a great time and appreciate all the support.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, as I always say, in the moment of insight, take massive action. And so what are your boundaries? That's the insight I want you to get. Understand, like Chris was just saying, go someplace, write your boundaries. Now, you could leave the house. You could not leave the house. You go to a coffee shop, your office. But think right now, like, what are my boundaries? We all have ones in society that we just kind of agree on. Like, you don't kill people, right? Those are kind of boundaries. But also, cheating, is that a boundary? Is lying a boundary? Is criticism or talking ill of one another a boundary? Or maybe it's we won't yell at each other or call each other bad names are also boundaries. Figure out which ones yours are, and then also talk to your partner about what hers are. I think it's important that both of you know it. But either way, take care of yourself. Start on your side of the street. Define your boundaries, and then make sure you communicate them in a loving yet firm way. Guys, we'll see you next time on the TPM Show.